Is Uber a monopoly? And should the government get involved in terms of antitrust? Hi, my name is Levi, and this is episode 1676 of the Tip You in the App Daily Drive. Now, why 1676? Basically because that's the number of days it's been since I started doing rideshare. And I got tired of trying to come up with just some sort of number, and that seems like the best number. I don't know. What do you think? Okay, now it's pretty much agreed upon by most drivers that Uber, maybe not Lyft, but Uber is a monopoly. For example, if I were to drive in the city of Ithaca or Auburn, up here in upstate New York, outside of Syracuse or Binghamton, honest to goodness truth, if I turn the Lyft app on, almost no one requests a ride, but Uber could be surging. So yeah, I guess in terms of rideshare through an app, Uber is a monopoly. But I made this post, and I'll show it on the screen here, where it says, I used to get paid $55 for a reserved ride, and now Uber is offering it for $50. And, I'm like, hey, does Uber understand how inflation works? And it's frustrating for us drivers as Uber continues to lower and lower the fares. And a friend of mine, Jeffrey White, here on X, he responded basically saying, they do not care. When you control too much of the market, you can exert unfair influence over the market. This is why many are looking to break up Google, as an example. We have antitrust laws for a reason. At some point, there will be a correction. And I just liked it. And I think he makes a really good point in the sense that, yeah, we don't want monopolies. We don't want these corporations to get so big and so powerful where they influence the entire marketplace. And they control the marketplace, maybe a better way to say it. But I want to get to the specific term monopoly. Now, Jeffrey didn't say this, so I'm not going to say this is his idea, but I think this idea that Uber is a monopoly and because they have so much control, they can control the price. And I don't think that's really the case. All right, so the ride I was mentioning was a reserved ride, $50 to go from Ithaca to Syracuse. And I do this ride probably 10 times a week. I do it a lot. And it used to pay $55, and now they're offering it for $50. Sometimes they offer it for $60, though. I don't know. Uber's pricing is kind of stupid. But they used to offer it for $55 consistently. Now I'm seeing it almost consistently for $50, and it's frustrating, and it sucks, and I don't like it. But are they a monopoly? And I was thinking to myself, no, not for this particular ride, they're not. They have to compete with a couple of things. Number one, if you're going from Ithaca to Syracuse, 99 out of 100 times you're trying to get to the airport. And there's a bus that leaves from different spots all across Ithaca to go to the Syracuse airport for like $30, $40. That's one price point right there. And it happens a couple times a day. And there's that. The second thing, and probably even more importantly, is people could just fly right out of Ithaca. They don't have to catch an Uber to go all the way to Syracuse. And that's part of their price consideration. So I'm going to make up some numbers here, but just as an example, it may be $600 to fly out of Ithaca to wherever you're going, then back to Ithaca. Whereas it's maybe only $500 to fly out of Syracuse, but it's a $100 Uber, and you have to do that twice. Uber has to compete with that price too. So there's buses, you can fly out of different locations. I know a lot of people actually, quite frankly, just get rides from their friends. They live in Ithaca and they don't want to catch an Uber, so they ride with their friends, and that's a cheaper price. They can drive their car up if you live in Ithaca. Maybe you're not a college student and you live in Ithaca, but you want to drive up to Syracuse. You can drive up to Syracuse, pay to park, and it's not going to cost you $200, basically, if it's $100 one way and so $200 round trip. It's not going to cost you $200 to park up at the Syracuse airport. So all those things are competing. And by the way, here's the biggest one. I didn't even think about this. Most of the people are trying to get to New York City. They're flying from either Ithaca or Syracuse to New York City, then from New York City to all across the world. They can catch a bus to New York City. Also, it's a 4-hour bus ride. I think that's like $80 round trip or something like that. maybe 120 round trip. I don't know the exact price, but my point is this: the pricing and the exact difference is not the importance. The idea of the word monopoly and this idea that Uber has control over the entire marketplace. And the reality is, at least in this one example, people have a lot of options. And Uber has to compete with that price point. Uber can't just charge whatever they want to the passenger and only pay the driver a certain amount, because Uber also has to cover things like insurance costs and software costs and all their costs. And quite frankly, you and me as drivers, we have our own discretion. Is 50 worth it? I'm going to take the ride. And so they knew they had $5 in additional margin in there because they were paying 55 and now they're paying 50. Maybe it's not a good idea for me to take that ride, but as the fares continue to drop, I got to do something, and rideshare is still a major part of my income. So I'm going to take that ride. Now, maybe in the long run, I'm going to switch to something else, but Uber thinks they can get some more drivers in, and they don't care about the quality of the car. You and I've seen some rideshare drivers out there, some really beat up cars. So the cheaper car, a driver who needs more money, whatever it is, maybe Uber even knows their margin can get down to 45. They can charge 40 or pay a driver 45. I'm not saying it's morally right. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying I agree with it. I just don't think this is where the government should get involved. I don't think Uber is violating some sort of antitrust thing. They're definitely not a monopoly because people have a ton of options. And we can go through so many scenarios like this where you and I, we have cars. How often do you catch an Uber or do you drive, right? Think about in your own personal life. How often do you decide you're going to drive your own car instead of catching an Uber or a Lyft? I don't think it's a monopoly. I think people all the time make rational or even irrational pricing decisions based upon what they need at that moment in time. So the college students, here in Syracuse, sometimes they walk, but when the weather's bad, they want to catch an Uber. As the night gets later, maybe they want to catch an Uber just to be safe, but they can catch a bus. They can also drive around the campus. They can drive to different things. There's so many ways. They've got those little scooters now and rent-a-bikes in Syracuse. They didn't have those 4 years ago, but now they do. There's so many things competing in the world of transportation. Yeah, so if we're looking strictly at rideshare, maybe in certain cities, like I said, Auburn, Ithaca, maybe Uber is a monopoly. I didn't even talk about taxis. And those exist in Ithaca and Auburn. People in Cortland, that's another city. Yeah, so if I were to take that transaction and narrow it down to very functionality, the world of rideshare, yeah, maybe in certain cities Uber is a monopoly. But in most cities there's Lyft. In most cities there's taxis. In most cities there's buses. A lot of cities have people drive their own cars. People ride bikes. People walk. There's so many options. There's so many options in the world of transportation. I just don't see Uber as a monopoly, and nor do I think the government is going to solve what you and I are experiencing in terms of pricing. I think what we really need in terms of how much we're going to get paid on the fare is a reduction in drivers. And the only way that's going to happen is if the government changes immigration laws potentially, and or the economy continues to get better. If the inflation slows down, the economy gets better, people are going to choose to not be a rideshare driver. They're going to go do something else. And the reduction in supply of drivers is going to be by far the most effective thing for you and I to earn as much money as possible. I don't know. What do you think? Am I missing it? I hate sound like I'm in defense of Uber because I don't want to defend Uber. But I also don't want the government to start saying something's a monopoly when it really isn't. I hope you're well, hope you're safe, and know that I'm cheering for you. Bye.